Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be talking about episode 4 of Pam and Tommy. The episode is called The Masturbator, spelled in a slightly different way and two different words, so a play on words there for the title. Some amusing titles this season, so full spoilers from the beginning as always. This is the first episode that isn't directed by Greg Gillespie. It's directed by Lake Bell, who I'm pretty sure is an actress normally. I don't know if she's directed anything else, but that's sort of how I know her. I can't really say I've seen her in anything, but I do know the name, so I'm pretty sure she's normally an actress. But she actually directs this one, and she does a really solid job, I think. One thing I'll say about it is that it's 42 minutes long, so it's the shortest episode yet, and I think they got the length just about perfect, where it feels like a pretty satisfying, meaty episode where you have some good character stuff and some important scenes, but it definitely feels like it doesn't outstay its welcome. Sometimes when you watch a 42-minute episode of TV, which obviously for some network shows has been the standard over the years, you either feel like, I guess more often than not, you feel like they could have done with a bit more time to flesh it out, but sometimes there's the opposite, where the idea for the episode really, they suffer to get it out for 42 minutes, but in this case 42 minutes seems spot on, and it's one of the good things about the modern age of TV and streaming shows is you can be flexible and you can do a length which suits the sort of thing, rather than being restricted to it has to be this length all the time. And we've seen that with this show, because you've had a range of running times that are just like under an hour. Like I think the longest so far has been 51 minutes. You've had 48 minutes. This is obviously down to 42, so there is sort of flexibility there, which I think is always a good thing. So getting into the episode itself, the story of it is that the sex tape is now out, it's on the internet, and we see, and this is the episode where Tommy and Pam obviously find out about it, and their reaction to it is very well handled. It's very dramatically engaging and effective, and I think the difference in their reaction to it is really telling, and it's sort of, again, we get some strong character stuff where we really see the difference in their personalities and how she's being portrayed in this drama compared to him, which for some really is a positive, because I think I was talking to Rachel earlier about this, but she said she remembers this time very well, and how she was sort of really harshly portrayed at times, that being Pamela Anderson, compared with how Tommy was portrayed. So if anything, this series certainly has put some balance on that, because once again he comes off really terribly in this episode, one scene in particular, but there's some good dramatic stuff showing their reactions, and especially her reaction once she finds out. And the episode sets this up well, because what happens is it opens with obviously the tape going viral and the reaction, and obviously Rand and Minty enjoying the success of it. And then we get a contrast shot of Tommy and Pam where it's confirmed that she is pregnant. They go for the ultrasound and they're celebrating. And this is a good dramatic point to set the episode off, and compared to how it ends, where they're in a very different place, especially Pamela Anderson, because at the start of the episode, really, she's at a high point in her life because she's excited for the birth of her first child, and things in some ways couldn't be better. But later on, when she finds out about the sex tape, and as things develop, then the episode ends in a very low place for both of them, but mostly for her, you have to say. So dramatically, all this works very well. I'll talk a bit about the Rand plot in this first, because things sharply take a turn for him, and one of the things we see is, as Tommy's like stepping up the pressure to try and get like the tape back, and there's this stuff where he's going to extreme measures, because when they call in the police and Tommy thinks that they're not taking it too seriously, then he hires his own private investigator to try and get it back, to try and find out. And obviously Rand's name comes up, and that he was in the house and stuff even after he'd been fired. So, and again, although this isn't as funny as some episodes, there are some like well-placed moments of comedy, because there's a scene where the private investigator goes over to Rand's house and like barges in and like threatens him, where's the tape, and gives him a couple of hits. And what happens is the neighbour starts like banging on the wall and shouting because he hears all this noise, and like, hey, if you don't keep it down, I'm gonna call the cops. And Rand's reaction is really funny. It's like, yeah, great, call the cops. And I think this, again, is where Seth Rogen is like really in his element, because he's very good at playing sort of weaselly, like nerdy type character. So when he's like squirming in this scene and he's like, hey, yeah, that's cool, call the cops, I think it's him really in his element. But we get little bits. We get a couple more scenes with Rand and his ex-girlfriend, and she's still wanting a divorce, and like he pays her back some money that he supposedly owed her from like years ago, and she asks about, well, because he says, I can give you this money because things are, with that project I mentioned, things are picking up. And she's like, well, are they picking up enough for us to like get the divorce? And he says, no, not quite, I still can't afford it. And there's a moment of sadness, because again he's clinging on to this hope that they'll get back together. So when she mentions the divorce again, his head sort of hangs a bit. But you do get a sense of a little bit of a spark, not that she wants to get back with him, but just then they did share it a bit in the past. Like they bond over this particular book, and you at least get a sense that there was something there in the past. And obviously from his point of view, he would like there to be something again. But like the big thing with Rand in this episode is that Milty has gone into hiding. He's just like living off the success of the tape, and as things spiral out of control, and Rand is being pursued by the private investigator. At one point, Tommy sends like this biker gang after him and Milty, and the biker gang stuff might have been a bit much. I'll say that. I just thought that was a little on the silly side, but it's not a big deal. But they're being pursued by this biker gang, and one of the things they show us is that, as I said, Milty has gone into hiding, and he's just enjoying the money and stuff, and hiding away, in his apartment with some girls. And when they go to the studio and Rand flees, and he goes to Milty's house, and he's like, telling him, and Milty's like getting all paranoid. Did you mention my name? Stuff like that, and getting on edge. But he talks Rand into like going back to the studio and cleaning things up. But we see very much how he's using the situation, and the stuff with Rand, how he like at one point when he finds out the tape, then they found out about the tape and they want the tape back. and that they go into extremes together. Like he starts getting annoyed at like when he sees a bootlegger like selling it outside Tower Records and trying to get it back. So there's all that stuff with Rand, and as I said, the stuff with Pam and Tom when they realise about the tape being out there and the reaction, because they come across the safe is stolen, and it's sort of significant that Pam's the first one to think of the tape and to remember that it's in there, because it's quite a funny scene when they call the cops over and Tom is like listing all the things and in the safe, and he's listing various things, and Pamela's like, well, wasn't the tape in there? And the two reactions again it's quite telling, because he seems all pissed and upset over like losing things like his guns and certain valuables, and she feels more worried about the tape being out there. She feels really violated, and her reaction and the comment she makes about sexism and the difference between how a woman is viewed and treated when a sex tape is put out there compared to a man, it just nails it. It just gets to the nub of the situation and some of the points which this story makes, and which actually why it is important to do a drama about, you know, the Pam Anderson, Tommy Lee story and the whole sex tape, because she says it to him at one point. She says, for me as a woman, it's much, much worse, because they'll treat me like a slut, whereas you'll be seen as cool, people will be giving you high fives down the street, and they absolutely nailed the point, because that is the double standard in a nutshell. And sadly, it's still the double standard today. Now, it might be a bit more even because of the way things have changed and stuff, but it still very much is the double standard in the way a lot of guys talk and the whole attitude to the two genders when it comes to this sort of thing. So it's a great scene, and the reactions, and this, because this is the first time you see like friction, real friction in the Pam Tommy relationship. And I was talking about a comment he made earlier, which I was going to get to, and it's like he's done some awful things already in this drama, but his comment to her in this scene just sinks new depths, because when they're getting into it and they're debating stuff, and he's like, oh, don't worry, I'll get it back. But he makes a comment at one point where he says, well, it's not like it's something people haven't seen before. And, you know, and it's just, yeah, terrible. Such a crude, nasty comment. And it sort of sums up, at least when it comes to this drama, at least the sort of characters that Tommy has, and they get into a fight and stuff, and she's justifiably pissed, but it obviously builds to this low point for them at the end of the episode, and this is where Lily James does some great acting. I think there's little touches with her as Pam where you see this bubbly little charm. There's a nice scene with her on set with like one of the guys, I'm not sure if it's like a cameraman or just someone who works there, where she's like asking about his kids and being quite playful. But then when because people on set are watching the tape, that's when she first realises then it's out there, and this is sort of serious. And but it's when the paparazzi are like swarming around and she's starting to get stressed, it's having an effect on her, and it leads to something going wrong with the baby, and they have to go to a hospital. And I think the shot of James as Pam in the car and her just feeling overwhelmed by all this is nice bit of acting from her and a good bit of direction, and yeah, it leads to like Anderson losing the baby, sadly. So again, we see the dramatic like down point and end of the episode compared to where they were at the start. And again, it's very well directed, good use of music, because they use that What's Going On song, which is really not the Marvin Gaye one, the Cher one, the Hey Hey What's Going On, that song, which is a great choice for that situation. And yeah, it just ends with this explosion on the road because they're driving back and obviously they're upset, and a cameraman like follows them in a car and takes a shot, and Tommy does his normal macho thing, but it's actually Pam who acts out of character. Like she's just had enough. She gets out of the car and I think she's got something like a baseball bat or something and just wallops the window and screams, and you sort of can't blame her at that point. Like, she's just had enough. So that's the episode. That's good stuff again. Pam and Tommy for this week, the Master Blaster. Really tight episode, I thought. What did you think of the episode in the comments below? Like and subscribe as always. You can share me out on social media. Ring that bell on YouTube. It'll notify you when I go live with a video. And also support me on Patreon. Patreon.com/borednow. And I'll be back with more Pam and Tommy soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.